your celebration of love. Wedding flowers and plants grown in Hawaii. The shapes, colors, and textures of paradise. In the fall of 2022, the Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association gathered talented floral designers from across the US and Canada. They shared techniques for exotic floral designs using Hawaii-grown flowers and plants.
What I absolutely love about Tropicals is the diversity of the product line that there are from Hawaii. There's a lot of beautiful vines that I'm so fond of, the roots that I'm fond of, and of course the flowers, my favorite being anthuriums and orchids. Always it has been that. But over the years, it's just playing with the mixes, the interesting dynamics of one form to the other, and the ways that they can be contrasted. And especially in the Tropical Nouveau work, where we're mixing with temperates, it just becomes even more exciting. There's just so much to discover in the combinations that are possible. For my first piece, I selected the softer shades of pinks. And in order to start that, I selected the anthurium, the pink anthurium on the softer tone, and then coordinated with the beautiful bromeliad in the very blush champagne to pink tone. So based on that, I wanted to use a structure that I built with a combination of flat cane and extenders and wrapped wire to create a setting to mechanically support the combination of flowers without the flowers piling up on top of each other. I wanted them to float a little bit off of the structure that I built and keep the structure itself being very fluid so that it has a linear flow through it, which then is repeated by some of the lines that I created with bear grass and some of the foliages. The interesting combination of the guzmania or the bromeliad, the blush color bromeliad, on the back side, complemented with the cafe au lait dahlia, which seems like the total opposites of the botanical spectrum. But when you really look at it side by side, you can see definitely the similarity in the way the bracts or the petals emerge from the center. And that's what I wanted to show, is for the viewer, for anyone looking at it, that they can see that there's similarities by color and by really the shapes and the form itself. And of course, the use of the nerine blossoms, the single blooms of the nerine also radiating in the same way with its petaling. And so that combination of the three different materials that illustrate the similarities of form. Meanwhile, we have the beautiful anthurium, and it's the spathe being the heart-shaped and being very soft and romantic in this soft pink color with a very light tone blush spadix. Also the double flowering wax flower with its tightness, and so that you have the texture of multiple blooms against the starkness of the spathe of the anthurium. Also, the very beautiful frilly tulips that are pink with the white edges also emulate the similarity of and connecting the form of the anthurium to nerine, to the bromeliad, and to the dahlia.
Here for our chandelier piece, we've started with a very loose wire form. So I've water tubed everything but the kings and proteas and gingers, because that can sustain the climate without having the water source. But the shower trees and the dahlia actually are just secured in with water tubes, and then they are zip tied. We basically that's pretty much the flowers, but we started first on the structure itself, a light covering of pepperberry. Then we added in the kings next. Then the next heavy item would be the minks, they are hybrids. After that, we came in with the large ginger. And again, those are just zip tied into the structure that it has a light coat of the pepperberry. And then the next step was to add in the shower tree flowers and then the dahlias. And again, those were water tubed and just zipped in. And that created this beautiful effect where, you know, with the shower tree, they're actually hanging. So this is the perfect way to showcase the flowers itself, because that's the way they're growing in the trees. So we're just taking it from nature, that we'll use this, and even for the pepperberry that we're using, and it actually has the berries as well. That's the way you'd find it growing on the tree. So this is like a perfect example of taking something from nature and just mimicking the way that it actually grows in nature.
So this is for a bride, a small wedding, and she had a vision that she wanted flowers coming down, but then she changed her mind and then wanted to expand it a little bit more. So we were actually just planning to do one row of flowers, but because she wanted it to feel like they were sitting underneath all these flowers, we came up with a grid on top. But this is actually what the arch is on top, which is just a single pole. So it's about a 1-inch pole. And we did just a light chicken wire, just one row there. And since we had the hanging heliconias, what I did up there was I crossed over the stalks and I tied them together so it made it stronger. So I created a grid, which is like just which way, facing all these different directions, which made branches to come out further. And from there, I laid some greenery on top of that. All the flowers that we wired individually, so the wire just goes up and we just hook it. And some of it, we actually tied the orchids together. We crisscrossed to make like a saddle, and we just laid them over, and they're just laying down.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the orchids and the anthuriums that are from the UH lab?
So we have the white Uni-Y Mist, the two-tone Uni-Y Supreme, and the purple is Wally Murazani. So for the anthuriums, we have here Red Tropic Fire. We have the pink Obake Kapoho Velo. We have the pink Marian Seafirth and the pink Princess Aiko.
And those are all created
at the University of Hawaii. That's
wow,
right.
That's fantastic. On the bottom here, Tessie and Mark, I had them just put flowers in vases.
I see we have some zinnias and dahlias in the arrangement.
They're stunning. I mean, absolutely stunning. The colors, the variations. I mean, I love locally grown flowers.
Today we're going to make a tablescape using Big Island products, tropical and temperates. We started off by using a chicken wire roll, and inside we have podocarpus and some newspaper. The newspaper shreds, it comes in all of our flowers, so a way to recycle it, and also we can wet it first so that way there's a little water component while we're making this. We chose to do an ombre starting from dark reds, maroons, going out to hot pink, light pink, and down to white. We can start off with the red section here. So we have some safari anthuriums from Greenpoint. We also have some jungle kings and regular red ginger. Cymbidiums, these are from Orchid People in Waimea. We also have some scabiosa and red amaranthus that came from Pu'o'ono Farm. Let's see, we have, this is Leucadendron safari that we actually grow on our farm as well. The monsteras from Greenpoint, we have some rhapis and areca palm. And then we have the Kimi ginger that came from Hilo and the Tomi ginger. We also have some Lysianthus and some spray roses that came from J&D Farms. Going off the table here, we have our white palette. We went with some locally grown hydrangea from J&D Farms. We have Maui Bride Anthurium, some white dendrobium orchids, some white ginger, and some Lysianthus. This piece that we have here, we have it on the table here as like a nice table runner, a nice tablescape for any weddings or corporate events. This actually can be repurposed. We can actually hang this on a nice arbor, and then after the ceremony is done, you can bring it down so you can get the 2-for-1 repurposing of your flowers here. Again, it's all 100% Big Island. It's a lot more sustainable. We're supporting each other, and it gives a nice community feel for all of, from farm to table kind of aspect for this design that we have here.
Generally, these destination weddings happen right around sunset. I thought it would be nice to bring in some sunset colors. So the bromeliads that I chose were the shades of orange, yellow phalaenopsis, and then the palm, it's the inflorescence at the phase right when the berries, the nuts are starting to form. Past times, they would have had the tiki torch and they would have had flames leading to the exit. So that was part of the theory too, is to have them kind of look flamey. And then because the bamboo looked so teeny underneath the flowers, I got some passion fruit vines and wrapped them around. And these are also set in oasis cages for structure.
Lei for us can be seen as a sign of life, almost like an umbilical cord. It's an extension from one's self or place to the next person. So the next time you wear a lei or receive a lei, just take that moment into consideration. Here we have our lokelani, which is the flower and color of Maui, but we also have something a little bit more intricate. This is ohaiali'i and can be made with thousands of flowers, okay? So, and then we also have this here, which is crown flower petals, or pua kalaunu. This was Queen Liliuokalani's favorite flower, and the monarch's as well. And then also the fragrant flowers. So this here is only in season during this time, and it's sort of going out of season, but we have pakalana. So anytime you see our favorite fragrant flowers like pikake, pakalana, it's just for the time. It's usually the hot summer months. We're so lucky to be here in Hilo. Maile, as you know, grows abundant here in the mountains, and we really want to kind of share the message about how much we cherish this lei here. I think sometimes it's our first go-to. We want to represent with maile. We love this, but the more we use it, sometimes it can be harder and harder to gather. So there are other options that we can use, like tea leaf to make maile lei and things like that. Lauae, palapalai. For our base of our lei, which we'll be passing out after, We use banana leaf. So we grow and gather this ourselves. We pick this, prep it down to size for you. This type of lei can be worn on your head as lei po'o or short around your neck as lei a'i. So you have two different options today.
These next series of designs, I kind of used the monstera root as my main structure element. This design I drilled into the eucalyptus trunk. I love the eucalyptus trunk because it's heavy, so it gives you a nice sturdy base, and then built it with the wires. As you can see, the binding point here is where I kind of binded all the monstera. And then on top, I created a tatami disc with the passion vine, and then inserted large test tubes, attached a gorgeous bromeliad on the side, and again, kind of to keep the disc up, I kind of did some wires so to elevate it. Otherwise, it would sink in. So you kind of need that sort of element to make sure that your design doesn't sink in. This next one here, I kind of created a gorgeous structure with the monstera, kind of attaching it to the wires, and then kind of giving it this beautiful movement with the oncidium. And then continued with creating the structures, and I used using the eucalyptus trunk again, but I kind of did my structure a little bit lower, so it kind of gives you a smaller footprint. This line of this black line here is basically there's a wire on the inside. So I drilled into the wood, inserted a wire, and it was long enough to kind of go all the way around. And I inserted it in this side, drilled in this side, and inserted it into the trunk. And then I basically started with 2 pieces of monstera roots at a time, and kind of going around, twisting every single time I came around. I would twist with the wire on the inside, and then bring the wire outside, and then twist back in. So, but the main thing with this design was I experimented with doing 2 roots as opposed to just 1, because usually when I build these structures, I only use 1, and I found that with 2, it doesn't really compromise on the building and the finesse of the container, but it builds a lot quicker. So you can do your structures a lot quicker. And then we, once we got to the top, I just wanted to do like a crescent coming down on this gorgeous sculpture, with the anthurium, this beautiful vine, which is in the string of hearts family, and then just a beautiful lady slipper orchid.
A design that I call floral tattoos. These are pieces that can be worn anywhere on the body. I start with kinesiology tape, just bought at a drugstore, and I cut a little form out of the tape, and this form depends on where this will be placed on the body. But I like to often do kind of a S shape so that the finished piece really hugs the contours of the body. From there, I just put a little layer of glue on the platform and allow it to start getting tacky. And then I prepare my materials. I have the beautiful oncidium from Greenpoint, just cutting from the lower laterals. And I have this beautiful yellow and white brunia, some beautiful banana flower from the farmer's market. So it's just as simple as choosing a little element that really hugs the curve that I've cut and placing. So the nice thing about this, it does have a paper backing so you can make ahead of time. But when it's time to wear, you just simply peel that off, decide where you'd like to place the piece, and press it down onto the skin.
This is the base of what I created to make the bouquet that we're going to use in this example. This is using material from the Smithers Oasis company called rustic wire. And it's basically a heavier gauge wire that has a little bit of jute twisted around the outside to cover it, which is basically, it's 8 sets of wire that are my wingspan, then folded in half, held together, and then twisted together to make the handle of the bouquet holder. After that, we've just created one of the handmade chicken wires that we see in many different varieties now, basically using my thumb to put in between 2 wires and then twisting once, twice to create the holes that we see within the chicken wire. But with this, we've created a bouquet handle, we'll say. So as you can see, the armature, it doesn't disappear. It's not totally hidden, but it's used as part of the bouquet. It creates little areas of interest, if you look at this bouquet from different sides, that you can actually see in and explore what's inside the bouquet holder, as well as florals that have come out and have exploded out from the center. And I really am in love with the fact that these protea have a very flat surface as they open. So it becomes almost like stair steps for your eye to follow down from the highest point down and really down low into the design. The finishing touch on this is all of the ends of the wires that we have. We've clipped to the size we wanted, and we've actually put a hypericum berry on the end. So that mechanic is finished very nicely, and it becomes these little dots of color throughout here. So in thinking, how can we take this bouquet just to another level of interest? And we can do that by continuing the structure in a different fashion. So for this, what I have created was, we'll say it's a cap or a top for the arrangement, where we've not started with the handle, but we've just started making that handmade chicken wire in a very organic and irregular pattern. And we've left some tendrils very long on this. Finished them off with the hypericum berry. Just a little bit of a cold adhesive glue is just enough to tie it in and to bind it to the jute wire that's at the end of there. And if we take this and we look at our bouquet and we say, okay, we'll say that's the front of the bouquet. If we take this cap and we just kind of nestle it down through the flowers and maybe just use some of these extensions that we had there already to just twist and tie this into place, we can then now have a very interesting composition. So it's a way for us to have our art become not only just visually beautiful because of the colors and the textures that are there, but the construction that challenges the viewer to understand how this was made.
So in the boutonniere, I tried to put together something a little bit more unusual, where I would bring in little bits of pieces of different varieties and different colors to create a little bit more textures and drama. So it's not just one type of flowers or foliages wired together. In this case, they create a little bit more drama and a little bit more excitement. So my second piece is a small ring to carry for a flower girl. And the way I put that together, it's an 8-inch round wreath, and I covered it with a very colorful hot pink yarn first, because I wanted to bring in the color combination. I used bullion wire, and I just stringed the heads of the spray roses and also the heads of the dendrobiums and mocharas. And then I tied them around in halfway on the circle, and also I secured them with bullion wire. Then I used the cold glue, and I added some extra mochara flower pieces glued. And as a final step, I just wanted to add a little bit of movement when the girl carries the ring. And I did these strings of dendrobiums and mocaras, and I wired them on a Boolean wire and then attached them to the ring.
I wanted to create a leipo'o in some nice whites and cream colors. And when thinking about Hawaiian tropical flowers, the first thing that came to my mind there were the dendrobium orchids, because they have such a delicate feel to the blooms, as well as some interesting kind of pinkish color striations in the stem itself. I thought it would also be nice to add a few Hokuloa white anthurium, and for this application I wanted to bring in the designer size, which is a perfectly petite size for a flower crown. I chose some complementary dried flowers for the crown, and I prepared all my materials by trimming the blooms down to allow myself easy assembly. Starting with a base of natural raffia, I wrap each stem as I add them in with varying order of the beautiful textures. Now, the dried flowers I have in this halo piece are the cloud grass that first inspired this look, as well as peach statice, Polish yarrow, bunny-tail grass, straw flower, and another interesting texture called purple love grass that we cut straight from Mandy's fields. And they really bring out the purples in the dendrobium orchids really beautifully. I also wanted to embellish this bridal leipo'o with something special, so I thought to string some mini shells with the dendrobium orchid blooms, and I think it just adds something really lovely and special to this bridal leipo'o.
I decided to use heliconia and the bromelia at the same time in one design. The bromelia is huge, is too big for a bridal bouquet, so I actually deconstructed the leaves and then remake it into like a small piece that I can use it in the bridal bouquet. I also use 18 gauge wire, create like a structure first for me to hold the bouquet, because for such a big bouquet, especially with heliconia and bromelia, you need something to hold them into place, and then your bouquet will look more airy. I actually decided to choose from the color of the bromelia leaf. So when you look at the bromelia leaf, you have those like burgundy color inside. You have those a little bit like a almost black color inside. So these actually decides me to choose the black scabiosa and then also the burgundy amaranthus. When you choose a color, you don't want your color to be like independent. So like I'm using the orange, yellow, heliconia and bromelia together, so you need some colors that in between the color, the orange color and then burgundy color. So that is the reason I choose that dahlia. As you know, my favorite tropical flowers is anthurium. So I choose safari anthurium to go with the whole color palette.
I wanted to create a bridal bouquet that evoked the feeling of a Hawaiian lei. So very different textures and lots of different elements in this design. What I started with was actually a storage roll, a cardboard, heavy corrugated cardboard roll, and it just fits nicely as a floral muff. And wrapped that in various yarns to just create texture and bring in some color into the base of the design. That also gives you a little bit of a mechanic to glue some flowers into. The glue holds really well onto the yarn, so it's just another mechanic, but also looks really pretty and brings more texture. I then wrapped it in just a thin colored wire and a Boolean wire to give two different colors of wire and just add a little bit of glimmer to the base of the main construction piece, the muff. So then some other elements that I included are some balsa cubes and an interesting find that I found with little hollowed out pieces that actually sound like shells. They're not, so as the bride's walking down the aisle, it kind of sounds like shells that you may have collected on the seaside or at the ocean. The flowers used are beautiful Midori anthurium. I threaded some chrysanthemums onto just a thin wire to create a lei type piece that drapes and hangs over the design. I also incorporated Mocara orchids, and their depth of color ties in nicely with the chrysanthemums. And of course, some beautiful soft peach spray roses. Those were all wired, glued to seal in the moisture, and then wired either onto the main structure, where I had wrapped the wire around the base, or wired onto each individual lei type piece cascade.
A shape that's different and maybe iconic to us. The whole design is made so that there's a sense of lightness on the right-hand side, nothing too heavy, and then just supported by one panel of, pretty massive lot of flowers. And that way it has kind of like a floating effect. It doesn't look as if it's grounded so much as it's kind of floating, almost like a fishing pole, just kind of out there. And that's kind of what we're meaning to do. The one area that I don't think that we really talk about is really competition designing, because there's something different about competition designing. It's not just your ordinary design that you will give to a bride. You're competing to show your craftsmanship, your knowledge on techniques, mechanics, and so you have another layer of something that you want to put in. The reason why we're doing designing competition design rather than just regular bridal bouquet is because we're actually launching a competition. And you guys are the first ones to have an option to enter it or not. And so we have boxes of flowers that is like a surprise package. And you must use every variety that's in there in your bouquet, but you can add on anything else to complement it. So it could be, because it's all tropicals, so you can complement it with temperate flowers.
You could also complement it with other material, build structures, do things that to show off your design skills that would be suitable for competition work. In the box, and that's what it's all about, is a surprise package involves checking out to see what you have. And so you're going to do this. So the first box has, like, this is what you get right here. Really, basically, the only difference from box to box is really the color of anthurium, so, or the variety of anthurium. But you get, you know, dendrobium, you get the anthurium, you get the psittacorum, the curly lawai, palm. Yeah, I think it's all the same. Hala. Well, this one doesn't. Oh, yeah, it has hala. So there's plenty of flowers and foliages, but just remember, you have to use all of the varieties that's in here so that, you know, so that you can share with us how you use, how cool your usage is. I want you to open it, see what you have. And then I want you to figure out what kind of a structure or the kind of accessory that you might want to create. Create those. And then we're going to go outside and look at what other material that's out there that you want to add to it. You're allowed to add up to 10 stems of something else. And then you're going to design until you feel that you got that piece that's ready to go. What you're going to do is photograph it. This time we need a photograph to show that you have all the material in it. So front side, back side, so we can spot it. And then you're going to put a real good picture that's going to be the one that's going to be published, like as your piece, like the best side. Like we want that picture. If you put in extra details as far as techniques, mechanics, I want close-up of those because I want the judges to be able to see it.
Okay, Lois, would you please announce our third place winner and prize? Come.
Yes, love to. Drum roll, please.
So the third place, one box of tropical flowers and foliages twice in 2023, and the book The Art of Wearable Flowers by Susan McCleary goes to Kayla Vargas, Island Girl Plant Designs, Holualoa on the Big Island of Hawaii.
How exciting! Second place. All right. And the winner is... So second place, one box of tropical flowers and foliage each quarter in 2023, and the book, The Art of Wearable Flowers by Susan McCleary, is Yelena Ricci's Lily Bella Floral Design, Sarasota, Florida. Congratulations.
Our first place winner, round trip airline ticket to the Big Island, island of Hawaii, and a nursery tour on our island, and on nursery tours, and a signed copy of The Art of Wearable Flowers by Susan McCleary. Sorry, I'm supposed to hold this up. And the winner is Leah Ramanowski, Designing on the Edge, Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Hawaii's diverse microclimates are ideal for a spectacular array of flowers and plants, anthuriums, orchids, protea, tropicals, foliage, potted plants, and temperates from higher elevations. A forum was held with growers and breeders to explore current topics and areas of interest.
We're basically the interface between the university's research and resources and the industry that we're serving. We assess needs and we try to resolve those needs either through direct consultation or doing research or outreach. So James, Hannah, Joanna, and I, and then indirectly Tessie, Orville, and all the researchers are working to resolve pretty much whatever issues we assess. For example, I'm working on virus management in ginger, pest and disease management in orchid species, and new variety trialing. So Glenn touched on some of that stuff, protea, temperate crops, eucalyptus, really whatever you need.
I guess this is for Russell. You mentioned something about the virus that's really affecting the red ginger and the pink ginger and certain other varieties. What's going on with that?
Thanks for your question. So there are a suite of viruses that we've recently found that are infecting red ginger, pink ginger, anything in the Alpinia purpurata varieties of ginger. So your typical reds and pinks. So we kind of have this idea of what the spread of these viruses are across the state. Quarantine is not happening because they're everywhere. We do know that they're mainly spread through vegetative propagation. So anytime that you take a keiki or you cut up a mature plant, if it's virused, and almost all of them are, you're spreading that virus. So our solution in the immediate is to try to produce virus-free ginger plants. So we found some clean gingers that we are calling cleaner gingers because we don't know if they have other viruses we haven't identified. Trying to ID viruses that you don't know exist is really hard. You have to run through all the DNA that you get after sampling the plants. And so there may be some that we don't know of, but we feel like we've kind of got a good idea of what's there. So we found some clean plants. We are hopefully getting some money from legislation this year to tissue culture those plants and mass produce virus-free plants. If you start virus-free, you're going to stay virus-free for a good period of time, as long as you aren't infecting those plants mechanically by passing the viruses on through shears that have recently clipped virus plants. They're also spread by insects, so we'll have to do, as long as we get enough money, some work on how to prevent virus spread by insects. So typically it's aphids, mealybugs. Some of them might be spread by plant hoppers. It's going to be impossible to keep these insects out of your fields. So the best thing to do is start clean and try to prevent through not mechanically infecting your plants. So in short, produce virus-free plants, plant them in farms, and grow virus-free for as long as possible. Rinse and repeat.
Christian, how have you found growing temperates in a more tropical climate to be?
It's actually not that hard, and I think it's really not at all. It's a completely under-marketed industry in the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, you know my story. I've more than doubled every year, and I still can't keep up with the demand, not even close. So it's awesome. You know, financially, it's been very successful from a business perspective.
Okay, great.
You know, I was going to say that for those within the state of Hawaii, the HEFNA FedEx contract is very, very attractive. We routinely ship a case of 2 dozen potted orchid plants, which weighs about 20 to 24 pounds. We can ship it anywhere in Hawaii for less than $10, FedEx Priority 1. So if you're not a member yet, you better join HEFNA and take advantage of the HEFNA FedEx rates.
I think for me, I've been in this position 2.5 years, and I'm not a florist, so understanding the trends and how they come about. Do they come about quickly? Is it gradual? For how long they stay? I know it probably varies a lot, but I know pampas grass, for example, will they just change quickly? Can really help from my side and the production side of things. So to me, I'm very curious as to how long these trends last, how they come about, if it's just too variable to really say.
Anything white does not go out of style. My shop makes 10 years. We will always have white, like brides and grooms and couples and all white. Blush and peach also do not seem to be going out of style anytime soon. So trends come through. I know we've seen the last couple years coming up yellows and greens, but for every wedding that we get, and our shop does a pretty good volume, every wedding that there's a yellow and a green, there's 4 or 5 that are blush white or blush white and peach. So there are trends, but there's still a very strong plateau of very traditional.
I wanted your thoughts on the myrtle ban and if we're going to take any steps necessary to start producing more plants from the myrtle family here commercially, since we can't get it anymore, because I do miss wax flower and all of the really nice big silver dollar eucalyptus.
We do have a grant for eucalyptus, trialing them locally. We're right now trialing 3 species that we just happened to have seed in before the ban went into effect. We've been trying to find ways to bring in other species to trial and produce locally. It's been a challenge to do legally, so we're kind of holding off on that and working with what we have in the state already. We have some data coming out. There's some that look really good. Silver dollar is one that's been consistently performing well. I'm not sure what the timeline is going to be scale-up wise in terms of producing enough of it. Other Myrtaceae, I know Hannah's done a lot of work. She has a huge collection on Maui of different import replacement plants. Maybe Hannah, do you want to kind of chat about those?
So before I started in this position, there was an import replacement plant collection that we are growing and maintaining at the Kula Research Station. So we do have a lot of different myrtles. We even have some fun, funky Proteaceae stuff like Grevillea, moonlights or red hooks. So we do have those plants, which is good, and we're maintaining them. And we do plan in the future, hopefully, to do more trialing, just collect more data to see, okay, which of these Myrtaceae import plants, like foliage or fillers, are susceptible to the rust. And we want to gather that information because we don't want to just distribute stuff that might be susceptible to the rust and affect your farm. But we will hopefully collect more data, do more trialing, and distribute more plant material in the future. It just takes a little bit to grow them, give them the right nutrients and love, and then make cuttings until they're rooted. But stay tuned, because we will be providing more plant material soon.
I just want to put in a plug, sorry Russell, that all of these things do take a lot of resources and money, and that's always kind of the limiting factor. So grants are getting harder and harder to get, and we hire lower and lower staff. So these are things that if you like these types of programs and want to see them, you can just show your support and try and get Ledge to help us also show their support. So
that's a great point, Joanna. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Because exactly, if we don't have the support or the funding for that, it's really difficult for us to maintain those plants, and then because that takes soil, resources, fertilizer, water, pots, all the things. So we do really need help and support, testimony to put these programs together.
Where's a good place to do that?
It's a great question.
HIFNA would be a good place to start.
The Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association is a nonprofit organization that supports many family-owned farms, nurseries, and distributors that are a vital part of Hawaii's economy. The Neotropica guidebook contains photos and information on hundreds of varieties and is available via email request. For weddings and special occasions held in Hawaii, choosing locally grown flowers and plants avoids imports that sometimes carry invasive species, which in turn may be harmful to agriculture and the environment. Nature's beauty grown with aloha. Say I do with flowers and plants grown in Hawaii.